And we see who the guy is, don't we?
Yep. Yep.
You know, the guy who's screwed up the relocation thing.
The chief secret manager in charge
and
of
the guy
secrets.
who's going after Alderman Widener and claiming that she's created some kind of an ethical turmoil down there.
The ethics are that she's going to be truthful and upfront and honest, and that's the problem.
That's the problem.
That's the problem.
We're going to, once again, this evening, call for the resignation or the discharge of City Attorney Scott Letney. Good morning. Welcome back to Talking Racine. We've been waiting for you, haven't we, guys? George?
Yes. I've been waiting and waiting and waiting.
George Myers, he's been anxiously anticipating your arrival. As has Jim Spodek, our producer.
Yes.
You just couldn't wait for them to get here, could you?
Okay, man.
And I'm glad you're here, too. I'm Dr. Ken Jorgen, your host. We've got a few items we're going to cover this morning, and the first of which is the lawsuit involving Sandy Widener, the alderman for the city of Racine. Sandy had a hearing on Wednesday, this immediate past Wednesday, the 9th of January. And what that was about was, I think if you've been following this, you know that she filed a suit against the city of Racine to get some materials that were being used to portray her as somebody who was in need of, what, ethical retraining?
Yeah, pretty much.
Something like that, yeah. So they were going to use these emails and a bunch of other materials to kind of like cast a bad light on her. And so she says, give me the materials. I want to see them. And the city attorney says, no, well, no, you can't see those. I mean, come on. I mean, basically, this is a court action. This is a prosecution. And you're not allowed to see the materials that they're going to be using as evidence against you?
Allowed to see it, but the other side is forced to show them to you.
Yeah.
Well, now...
Yeah, in its regular civil
in a regular court.
They are required to disclose it, and if they don't, they can be penalized by the court.
That's the way it should be.
Yeah.
But Judge Gashikevitz, who is handling this case, said, no, you're not entitled to those things. And she had the indiscretion of going out and talking to others about that. She didn't even reveal the materials, really.
No, and she wasn't even supposed to tell that they were being withheld. Let alone that they were withheld. You can't talk about them being withheld.
Yeah, bad girl. So they filed contempt charges against her. I mean, this has really gotten heavy duty. Anyway, she took the case to the appeals court and said, what is going on here? I want these materials. They're going to use these materials as evidence against me. I want access to these materials. And the appeals court looked at all of the materials that Judge Gashikevitz had determined was going to be part of a closed case, and they said, here, take another look at this. So it was remanded back to him, which is really kind of a slap on the hand. It's like saying, no, we're not going to sanction this. We're not going to be the cover story for you. Take a look at this. We don't believe that all of this should appropriately be sealed. So on Wednesday, he was going to announce what was to be remain sealed and what wouldn't be open to the public. And of course, the hearing was closed to the public, which is a violation of law.
Right. Not only was it closed, wasn't it kept off of the
court? It wasn't even on CCAP
agenda,
yeah.
Right?
It wasn't even listed.
Yes, it was not only a secret meeting, but it was secret that it was being held.
Meeting of the secret court.
Yeah, correct. Which is a step beyond. You couldn't find it on, like you say, you couldn't find it on CCAP.
It was,
but somehow
we made it down there.
He found out about it.
Yeah, well, so somebody made a mistake and let the information that should have been public anyway get out in the public, and so there were like 8 or 10 of us that showed up down at the courtroom.
Showed up. That's right.
Yeah, we said, okay, we want to be here. We want to witness
Racine was there.
Yeah, all 3 of us were down there.
Yep.
And several other active and concerned citizens. And the court said, nah, door's locked. This is closed. This is not for you to see. So Harry Waite went and he knocked on the door once the proceedings started, and he quoted the statutes and the Bill of Rights under which this was guaranteed, and they said no, the judge says it's closed. So then a little bit later, Alderman Carrie Glenn showed up at the proceedings. She says, what's going on? Why are you all sitting out in the hallway? And we explained to her, so go knock on the door. So she goes and knocks on the door. And
nobody answers, and she knocked again.
Knocked again, right. And then from the judge's chamber down the hall comes a deputy, and he confronts Harry Waite and says, I told you not to knock on the door. You know, you're not allowed in there, and blah, 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 and so on. So Harry is like looking at him and listening to him, and he's knowing that he's not the one that knocked on the door.
Yeah.
So he's letting the deputy explain himself, and then somebody sitting nearby says, it wasn't him. Well, it turned out it was Alderman Carrie Glenn who was knocking on the door. So the deputy went and confronted her, and we got it all on tape.
Yep. Yep.
It actually was on our website, and you can go and look at that. It's a very interesting development. So
That's where she did her famous sidestep.
Right.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, step away from the
The deputy
door
says, step away from the door, so she takes a big giant step towards
and smiled at him. Yeah. It's a great tape. If you haven't seen it, go and take a look at it. Anyway, the judge did review the materials. He said, well, you know, in second thought, there's a lot of material that really doesn't need to be sealed, so we're going to release some of this stuff on tomorrow morning. Well, lickety-split, somebody had an email off to him the following morning, where's the materials? And of course the response was, well, there were unforeseen difficulties, and it'll be coming out within 10 days.
Yeah, but regards to that hearing, though, it was very interesting, folks. It was supposed to be a closed hearing. No one's supposed to know about it. And suddenly, somebody's knocking on the door wanting to get in. Okay, now you just take this from the viewpoint of the judge. What the hell's going on? Why is somebody knocking on my door? Well, he at least had enough reaction to do something about it. You know, he
invited us in.
So it's really interesting. Yeah, he invites us in to tell us why we're being locked out.
Right. Yeah.
So we got to listen to why we're going to get locked out, and then we all had to leave the court, and they locked it up again.
Yeah, very
The whole thing from the beginning was bogus, really, from the beginning. The whole secret court thing, which should have never happened.
The whole thing about this closed government and the secrecy in the government.
And this is what happens when you start out wrong, and it just continues to compile.
By the way, this kind of came from Scott Letney, who is the chief door closer, window pull shader.
Kind of. He's like totally behind
in City Hall, you know. Yeah. And so, unfortunately, a little bit of that leaked over into the courthouse, which isn't too far away, about 6 blocks away. But it's a real shame because, as far as I know, you had to go in and get permission, Jim, when you want to do pictures. Right. But it was just a matter of getting the right signature on the right piece of paper, and then he could go in and take pictures. So it's been relatively open. But all of a sudden, this infectious disease coming from City Hall via Scott Letney got over to the courthouse, and there we are, sitting at the judge telling us why, listening to a judge telling us why we can't be in that courtroom and we're going to have to leave and he's going to lock the door.
How do you feel about the expenses of the legal representation that is being provided for the city by Attorney Cohen out of Milwaukee?
I tell you what, I sure can't afford it. Yeah, I know. And we should know that you know, if there's anything big
we're
about
not even being told how much you're spending.
It's one thing to be spending all this money, and it's another thing to not letting the people who are doing the offenders, funding, that's the taxpayers, know anything about it. So that's where the real
well, we've heard estimates that run up in like $250,000 and beyond for this case.
Well, I don't know if it was that high, but the fact is that there's any
I think we've heard 6 figures.
I'm not saying that's what it is. I'm saying that's what I've heard, that it could be that high.
And you know, and they keep it secret at their own risk, because when there's an information vacuum like that, where there's a big hole and people will start to fill it up.
Yep, exactly.
You know, nature hates a vacuum.
Right.
People start filling it with information, and that information can be pretty wild. So they, like I say, they're keeping it secret at their own risk.
One of the things that, before we close out on the Widener case, is we're very, very anxious to see the materials that have been released, so we can make a judgment ourselves as to what it is about these things that have now been deemed to not be so sensitive. Why were they considered so dangerous and so sensitive before? Who considered them that way, and why? So anyway,
Well, you know, here's one thing. We had someone on our Facebook page come up, and I thought it was a great question.
Oh yeah, that's good.
What could this one alderman have done or said that has scared the hell out of our city officials and the judge?
Isn't that a great question? I think that is
that
the
nailed
question.
it. Right.
A good way to start off with 2019 with a question like that.
Yeah.
Because
What has happened there?
what did she do? What is she unearthing? What did she threaten that caused them to have such a furor now, closing down everything and protecting emails?
She's just trying to do her job, as far as I can see. You know, I haven't seen anything dangerous that she's done.
You know, as we go on to this a little deeper, I think this all weaves together. I mean, it had been going on for at least a couple of years, and now this is starting to.
I got that email, you know, that I told you about. I got an email from someone in City Hall, just a simple question about a paint job. And attached to this email was this paragraph of me not telling anybody about this and not passing it on to anybody, and if it went to the wrong person, please take it off your computer and destroy it from its files. You know, a question about a paint job.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's gotten to that extent where I think what it is
Secret government.
Every communication is now considered private and secret, and that is beyond the pale. You talk about overreach. Government is famous for overreaching. You know, one little thing happens, and all of a sudden, everybody's got to get penalized because of this one.
We
little
got
thing.
world-class overreachers.
And this is a really dangerous area, because it's one thing to regulate an intersection because somebody has an accident, so now everybody's got to be penalized. It's another thing when you're going to shut down information coming out of the government, because that is probably next to the last step.
They're working for us.
Yeah,
you know,
that's right.
We got to know what they're doing. So the most frightening of all holidays, Halloween, which is when there was a committee of the whole meeting in 2017. Anyway, we're going to show a little bit of a clip from that meeting, and some of the things that. Well, the first thing that comes up is Amy Connolly is going to be explaining about Machinery Row.
What did we learn? What did we learn from Machinery Row?
Yes. And you know how we learn? We learn from our mistakes.
Yep. So I'll tell you what, let's start it and we'll just get into it.
Okay.
So to preview a little bit about what we're going to talk about tonight, we wanted to spend some time talking about what did we learn from the project formerly known as Machinery Row, and go over some of the points of that. Why should we continue to invest in this development? Ownership answers, financial answers based upon our last discussions, environmental answers, a process for moving forward, and staff recommendations. So what did we learn from the project formerly known as Machinery Row? We think it's really important that we talk about this in open, and that we openly discuss the things that we learned from the project, because if we don't acknowledge what we think went wrong, then we're obviously going to be doomed to repeat it. So
she's making an introduction of making it sound like, well, it was just mistakes, and you know, and we're actually learning from the process, as opposed to they've got some real serious problems they're hiding, and it's going to be better to go ahead and just get out and make excuses for it before people like us come along and point out what they've been doing, which we've been pointing around.
Because this was right before Corey Mason would be going into office.
Right.
This is after the election, and this is really the first committee of the whole meeting after the election, special election for mayor. So now Corey is going to be put into office. So my thought is here that we're going to clear it all up. So when Corey walks in, everything's done and cleaned up, and we've explained to the council what all happened, and you know, we're moving forward. It's time to put that behind us, and let's move forward with our new mayor.
Yeah, and what it is essentially is a cover-up. In other words, we want to put it behind us, but we also need to cover it over nicely with roses and stuff, saying it was a learning experience. We made some mistakes.
Yeah, but $7.4 million is a hell of a lot of tuition to learn a few things.
Right, and this is prior to the demolition. So we're at $7.4 million now. Plus, and she'll bring it up, we didn't count in any grant money, which they received $1 million in idle industrial grant. There was EPA grants. There was DNR grants. I mean, we're probably talking close to $10 million actual wasted dollars on machinery.
Well, no, it's more than that. We'll get to it later on, but it's
well, at this point, I mean, she doesn't bring it up. Okay, it's at 7.4, but there's probably roughly closer to 10 million.
Here's the basically thing, though, that I'm saying, is nobody's perfect. You know, we made a mistake.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, no, that's not what the problem is. The problem is that they tried to pull something off that they failed in doing.
Yep.
And so now they're having to make a cover-up. This is not a learning experience. This is because we made some mistakes. We're trying to cover something up that we tried to pull off, and it got totally messed up. So now we need to do a cover. So I think that's what I'm seeing in this, and that's what.
Well, and one thing before we go back to it, all the aldermen, including our staff, has a fiduciary responsibility is to protect those taxpayer dollars. And I think in here is a perfect example of them not doing their job.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So we learned very clearly that property acquisition requires acquisition specialists. So before the RDA or before the city acquires any property in the future, we will always use the services of an acquisition specialist to make sure that we are following the rights of tenants under property laws, and also that we're following state and federal laws relating to that. I think that's one thing that we didn't know clearly about, but we have certainly learned that that's a very important part of our process.
Okay, so there's a laundry list of things that we learned. And one of the things that's really a sore spot right now is the relocation problems that's been created by this project. Oh my God!
And she's saying we're going to solve this by having an acquisition specialist that's going to let us know about all that stuff. This is what we've learned, and see, this is proving my point, because that is not what's going on there. They already knew that. Jim, what was it? What you got some information there about our city attorneys and their
TID 18.
Yeah,
this is done in
TID
2014.
18. Now that's Machinery Row.
Machinery Row.
Tax Incremental District Machinery Row.
And I'm going to put it on the screen. Non-anticipated, there will be a need to relocate persons or businesses in conjunction with this plan.
Hold on a second. You missed those first couple words. It is not anticipated.
Right.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Now,
the need to relocate persons or businesses in conjunction with this plan. In the event relocation or acquisition of property by eminent domain becomes necessary at some point during the implementation of period, the city will follow applicable Wisconsin statute chapter 32.
Now, who said that?
That is in TID 18. It is signed by the city attorney, Scott Letney.
That's the critical point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, because Scott Letney gives lectures on relocation plans. So he should know that it is not a problem if he's writing it down there. There's nothing to learn from there. An acquisition specialist is not going to resolve that problem that an acquisition or a relocation specialist has already known about.
Yes,
Correct.
He's presented himself as an expert on the law that it has an effect on relocation, and he has lectured other municipalities.
And if there's any question that comes up, is how could someone that has that much information write something and sign something like that? And I think it gets to the question of arrogance, and just that we can get away with it because
you knew
we're
that
well
Sam
connected.
Azarian Marina since 1976 had been down there, and you didn't know it was there. We don't anticipate.
And all those other businesses?
Yeah.
And it's city money. I mean, how much? I mean, this is academic.
Well, and it's not just us that are disagreeing
Relocation
with
101.
Yeah.
It's not just us that are disagreeing with his statement. The Department of Administration, which is the state of Wisconsin's entity that reviews these kind of things and interprets that particular law, they have said you absolutely had an obligation to come up with a relocation plan for those people who were doing business and tenants down there at that site prior to even thinking about doing this construction project.
And when that letter first came up, Nicole Larson was the first one saying, and by the way, she is a co-expert along with Scott Letney on doing these doing these lectures. She came up and said, "Well, that's their opinion," type of thing. She just disregarded it. And if this person complaining wants to get money from us, talk to us. You don't have to go to the court to do it. Come and talk to us. Even though that was a total lie, because you already talked to them and they were ignoring him too. So the whole thing is fraught with what I think is this arrogance, and we can get away with whatever we want to get away with. That's the lesson they need to learn, and they're not learning it.
Well, here's the thing. If
The
this
point
happened-
is they aren't learning the lesson that needs to be
Well,
learned.
here, George. Let's go a little further. All right, this was told to the Common Council. This sat out there. They explained to them, we lost $7 million. We hope to do better. We messed up our relocation, and it goes on. And we're going to go each week, and we're going to take a section of this because this is a unbelievable committee of the whole meeting. How would this function? The city attorney, let's just say that was in a corporate environment, and they had his specialists come in and say, we lost $7 million. We didn't really understand what we were actually doing, but we're going to do better
We're
now.
sorry, and we're learning, and here's what we've learned. Yeah.
How would that fly?
Well, unless it's a company
You
that's
would probably
just
have
got,
a quick exit to the door.
Yeah.
unless they got like stupid money laying around and they're looking for tax write-offs, that guy would be out on the sidewalk.
There'd be a security
and there'd
guard.
be a guard
Yeah.
bringing him his cardboard box full of stuff. Here,
Yeah.
nice knowing you. See you later.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly what should happen here.
Absolutely.
There should be that city attorney. Here's the other thing. The aldermen sit there, listen to this. Nobody asks a question. Well, the $7 million that's now lost, the relocation that you obviously bumbled, there isn't even a question on that. And we're going to go through it. We'll go a little bit week by week because it's just amazing what they actually came up with. And I think they came up with it to basically let's just put this is behind us now. And I think this Common Council took it hook, line, and sinker. And one of the questions I also have is, where is the head of the Common Council? There should be some questions on this. There should have absolutely been questions. QA Shakur is running that meeting almost like, well, we just hope it goes away and everybody's happy.
Now, which meeting is that?
It's the committee. That's the committee of the whole meeting. He's running this meeting.
That's right. That's right. He was okay.
Yep.
Chairman.
So.
No, and my opinion is the council is just overwhelmed. At least it was at that time. Now we're getting some people in there that are ready to fight. One the gal was the door knocker.
Yeah.
Carrie Glenn is coming up real well, and Sandy Widener is there, and there's maybe some other people are going to join in and start challenging this stuff, because to sit there like they did at this meeting and just take it and say, well, hey, you know what? She's a nice person, Amy Conley, and she's sorry, and she's learned her lesson. The thing is that somewhere along the line, the council has. Well, you would ask it a couple shows back, who's in charge, and the council has to decide that they are in charge, and this is not okay. Just because somebody gets up and says, I'm sorry, doesn't mean you just say, okay, good, okay. So much water over the dam. No, it's more like you said, with get the guards showing them to the door, and here's your box of stuff, and
there's no accountability. There's no accountability, and I know there's a criminal complaint on this, and that again goes into the sheriff's department. That goes to the district attorney's office. Where are they? I mean, this is as blatant as it gets.
Well, and it gets back to the real way to solve it is just close down government down and don't let anybody know what's going on.
Yeah, right.
You know?
And that's where we go back to.
Yeah.
Now we go back to.
Now we go back to Sandy Widener and the closed case, and
don't let those emails out, because those emails are just going to be just as damning as this.
Yeah, I can't pass around the information I got about a paint job.
And we see who the guy is, don't we?
Yep.
The guy who's screwed up the relocation thing.
The chief secret manager in charge.
And the guy who's going after Alderman Widener and claiming that she's created some kind of an ethical turmoil down there.
The ethics are that she's going to be truthful and upfront and honest, and that's the problem.
That's the problem.
That's the problem.
We're going to, once again, this evening, call for the resignation or the discharge of City Attorney Scott Letney. Okay. Got that out there. I think that's,
Well, here's the thing. We need some aldermen that are going to step it up, because now's the time, because those aldermen are going to be just the same pot of water that Letney's going to be in when this stuff starts to hit the fan. And believe me, we have no problem going after aldermen that are going to protect this kind of fraud.
No, because it's our money just like it's your money.
Absolutely.
Out there, and we're sick of it. Okay, well, I think that's a pretty good wrap up for today. I enjoyed it. I hope you guys did.
I got some steam off.
Right. Oh, there's more coming, George.
We hope you enjoyed it and that you learned something, and we hope you come back next week. Anyway, thank you for being here. We appreciate you, and we enjoyed spending some time with you, and we'll see you next week.